In this tutorial, we're going to see how to make some text fade in slowly in Adobe Flash. And if we look at our example as shown on the screen, this is what we should see when we have completed this tutorial. And let's look at a preview of how this fades in. Each letter fading in slowly. Alright, let's start with a new Flash document. I've chosen the Flash File ActionScript 3 as my new document type. And we need to insert some text. So I'm going to use the text tool. And let's pick some text that is nice and thick when it's shown. I'm going to use the copper black. You can choose a different one, but this should be something that's fairly thick. And let's pick a nice tall size. In this case, I've made the font size 66 for my example. And let's just put some text on the screen. I'm going to write out Novi. I want to put a space between each letter just so I have some room to work. I need to make that a little bit wider so we can see the word all on one line. Also, our Novi school colors are green and white, so let's select the text and make sure that it's a nice shade of green. Now we want to break apart our text so each letter is a separate entity. So I'm going to highlight the word Novi. I'm going to use the Modify pull-down menu, and I'm going to choose the Break Apart command. So now we have each letter as its own separate piece of text. In order to animate this properly, each letter needs to be on its own layer. So while these are selected, I'm going to right click and choose the Distribute to Layers command. And you should now see a layer has been created for each one of the letters in the word Novi. Now we need to make each letter a symbol, so I'm going to select each letter separately, right click on it, and choose the Convert to Symbol option, and give it a name. In this case, maybe N for the name. Now repeat that for each letter of the word. Now if we look at our library dialog box, where did I put that? There it is. You can see now we have the 4 symbols that spell out the word Novi. Of course, in my example, they're not in order, but they're all there. I'm going to use 15 frames as my time segment for each letter to fade in along. So first I'm going to select the N layer, and I'm going over to frame 15, and I'm going to right click and create a new keyframe. Then I'm going to come back on frame 1 for the N, and then I'm going to come over and click on the N, and then for the color effect, if that's not expanded, we need to do that at this time. I'm going to choose the alpha style, and I'm going to change the alpha setting down to 0. Then I'm going to click on frame 15, and I see the N appear now. Then I'll click anywhere in between and right click and create a classic tween. So now we should see, if we scrub our timeline, the N slowly fading in. Next I want the O to start fading in at frame 15. So I'm going to click on frame 1 in the O layer, and I'm going to click and drag that frame, that keyframe, over to frame 15. Then I'm going to create a new keyframe at frame 30 for the layer O. and then I'm going to come back to frame 15 on the keyframe for the layer O and adjust its alpha setting. Of course, I have to actually, after I select the keyframe in the layer, I have to actually come down and click on the symbol itself and change the color effect style to alpha and crank it all the way down to 0. It doesn't go there by default. Then I'm going to come over to frame 30, and if the alpha isn't set to 100, I'm going to do that at this time. And then I'll insert a classic tween. Notice we have one problem. Our end disappears. Okay, so to keep the end during the whole entire segment of this movie, we need to create a blank keyframe at the end of where our movie is going to be, at that particular frame. So I'm projecting this movie is going to end on frame 60. So I'm just going to put in a frame there. I'm going to do the same thing for for the layer 0. So now the letters will stay once they fade in till the end of the movie. And we'll repeat the previous series of steps that we used for the O to animate the V. Again, I'm going to click on the keyframe on frame 1 for the layer V. Notice I'm hovering over till I see a little rectangle at the tail of the arrowhead. That ensures that I'll be able to move that. So I'm going to move that keyframe till it's lined up under the keyframe for the in frame 30. Now see my V appear. I'm going to insert a blank keyframe at 45. I didn't mean a blank keyframe. I'm going to insert a keyframe. Then I'm going to come back, layer V, frame 30, click on that keyframe, come down, click on the symbol, change the color effect to alpha style, crank the alpha down to 0, come up in between my two keyframes on layer V and insert a classic tween. I'll continue doing the same series of steps for the letter I. I'm going to move the keyframe for the layer I over to frame 45. I'm going to insert a new keyframe at frame 60. I'm going to come back to frame 45, layer I, click on that keyframe, adjust the alpha color effect to 0, come over to frame 60, make sure the alpha color effect is set to 100, put in my classic tween between the two keyframes, and I'm missing a blank frame at frame 60 for the letter V. And now if we scrub that, we should see our text slowly fading in. And let's do a preview, Control Enter, and there it looks like we've been successful.